Bondex and our great community. Thank you for joining. We're here on our first ever panel live stream with a few CEOs and marketing execs for some of cutting edge Web3 companies in the space that are going to be talking about talent and opportunities. And we have Jake Portster here to lead the way in the presentation. Jake, introduce yourself and kick things off.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ignacio, for the intro. I'm the founder here at Trendsetters, and I'll be kind of the MC throwing around some hard-hitting, pressing questions today. No, it'll be a really great conversation. I presume we will potentially open this up to Q&A later on, but I want to do a little bit more of a topic deep dive. That said, I think it'd be important to kick off with some intros real quick. Igor, I'll throw it over to you first. At that point, I'll move over to Max and then Imran, and then finally we'll work back to Ignacio, and then I'll start diving into our incredible agenda today. Igor, tell me a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So my name's Igor Tlanikov. I'm founder and CEO of AlphaPoint. AlphaPoint is a crypto veteran. We've been in the space since 2013, so over 9 years in the space. And what we do at AlphaPoint is we help give access to digital assets or Web3 assets all over the world. So over the years, we've powered over 150 crypto exchanges, brokerages, wallets, in over 35 different countries, and helping people access, trade, store crypto assets.
That's incredible. And Max, would love to learn about yourself as well.
Sure. Thanks a lot for having me. My name is Max Paul. I'm the co-founder of Atato. So we are based in Singapore, mostly in Southeast Asia. So we are what we call a custodian, those companies who actually secure the cryptos of banks, digital asset exchanges, and so on. The things that we are doing differently is that we believe that security should not be for those large corporations, but to everyone. So we are a custodian which offer custody services to basically individuals, small companies, small funds, and so on. So very nice to be here tonight.
Yep. And Imran, no pressure here. Incredible start, though. We'd love for you to round us out.
Thanks, Jake. Hi, guys. My name's Imran. I'm the head of marketing for Kyber Network. Our DEX is called Kyber Swap. So it's basically the best non-custodial exchange experience you can get. You swap, earn at the best rates. You can use DeFi on 12 chains. You participate in exciting campaigns with partners like Polygon, Avalanche, Banky Finance, and some really interesting campaigns coming up. Before this, I used to lead marketing in B2B enterprise roles, in e-commerce roles. I had my own marketing agency as well. So I have my own journey going into Web3 from Web2. So very excited to be here today. Thanks, guys.
And finally, Ignacio, for the two people.
And thank you everyone for joining. I guess it's fair to say then that we have some of the best infrastructure providers and players in the Web3 space here with us today. And as Bondex, we're also an infrastructure player focusing on talent for the Web3 space so that companies like the ones we have here today can build the world-class teams they need to actually make Web3 a reality. Believe it or not, the supply of talent in the space is nowhere near where it needs to be to get to the demand. Demand for talent and funding is very high. The supply is very low. Bondex is meant to be that bridge that bridges that gap and increases the total supply of talent for it. We're the leading Web3 professional network in this space. We're a year old. We're nearing now 1 million total users. And our idea is to have the jobs of all three, for example, guests that we have here today, apart from our other 15 partners that have signed up to kick off our Web3 job portal in September, October. And, I'm the CEO and founder with Martin Arias. We both come from traditional finance backgrounds. We both started in investment banking, M&A, and private equity. And then we ended up in HR tech, where we discovered that hiring needs to be modernized. It's the biggest pain point for any company in any industry, in any stage, not just beyond Web3, but everyone has talent. Human capital is not an industry. It's not a market. It's actually an asset class. And it is the hardest asset class to manage and exploit and nourish. And therefore, that's what our vision and our mission is to create a new model that is a Web3 model to actually improve on talent acquisition and management. Because today, we don't believe that people are getting the most out of it, both companies and both individual talents. And that's because the space is played with a lot of middlemen that are extracting way too much value versus what they provide. So I gave a long-winded explanation. Let's go from here, Jake. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, and the first thing I want to dive into is around structure. How do you structure a team effectively? And to provide context here, historically, when the Industrial Revolution really took place, it changed what a company and business structure needed to look like. And the same could be said about the internet technology development and the revolution that became. It changed how people work, how our teams structured, how do people report, manage, et cetera. That said, as we think about Web3 technologies, blockchain, et cetera, when we put that in context, it's fair to believe, I would say, that perhaps future team structures will need to look different to match the technology and what works best from an infrastructure standpoint. So Max, I want to kick things over to you first. Talk to me a little bit about what the structure of your team and talent looks like.
Sure, thanks. And just a bit of background, we've been around since 2018. So it was pre-COVID, right? So we are building blockchain applications for banks, exchanges, and digital asset businesses. And basically, my co-founder and I, we came from the traditional work, I would say, where would you do the 9 to 5 and all this stuff. So when we built the company, we wanted to have a much more flexible structure, where basically at Atato today, there is no working hours. You can basically work anywhere you want in the world at the time that you want. So we have people from Taiwan, Singapore, Russia, India, UK, Singapore, and so on. And the other thing is that you can work where you want, but you need to work with your team. So the flexibility is here. If you want to work in Web3, you need to offer some cool space for your employees and partners. But there is some drawbacks as well, because you need to own your work. You need to work on objectives. You need to deliver the same way as you are delivering with your team. So while it's cool on paper, basically you can set up the work way you want. You need to take responsibility. So today we are over 40 people at Atato. We're going to be more than 50 at the end of the year. We are growing fast. So the first thing that we did is that we hired one head of people. So basically an HR, and she's in charge of basically hiring everybody and making all those stuff works. So I think just to finish it, not too long, people really want to work in Web3. There's a lack of talent, as Ignacio was saying, but we see a lot of people moving into the space recently. But it's another way of working compared to even what you have seen in Web2 companies, Google, Facebook, and so on. Much more flexibility, but also much more decentralizations. So if you can take responsibility, own your work, and work with people from anywhere in the world, well, you can come to us.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I see we have another Max that has joined. Max, I want to turn it over to you for a quick introduction. And then Igor, I'm going to jump to you shortly. But Max is currently in outer space, it looks like, with the background there. We'd love for you to do a quick intro.
Thanks so much, Jake. Max here from Project Arc. We are building sustainable metaverses for large NGOs and also governments. And so a lot of our thought goes into thinking about how do we help use the tools of crypto to really help drive, massive social change and actually, regenerate the planet. And then we're about 30 people spread out across 7 countries. And so it's been kind of interesting to sort of build a post-COVID company and actually how do you sort of develop and grow like that. To echo something that was said earlier today, I think the opportunity to build kind of a fully remote team is actually now present. But at the same time, you also need to have a lot of thoughts around culture and cohesion and sort of empower a lot more people because you're not going to be seeing them every day through the week.
Yep. And Igor, you mentioned earlier, being a bit more of a veteran in this space. With that in mind, I would presume that early on there were perhaps some learning curves as you thought about employment structure and how that's maybe evolved. Could you talk a bit to maybe what that evolution has looked like over recent years in terms of how you've evolved the structure of your team?
Yeah, I think there's a couple components to structure. There's, how the teams are, there's the finance department, there's development. Ultimately, we build software, right? And we enable people to launch new businesses with that software. So the actual team structures are very similar. They grow as you grow a firm. When you're a small 20-person startup, it looks different than when you're over 100 people, right? And we've gone through, various cycles, and you have to actually change the structures of the team and have more leadership management. It's a lot easier when it's a small group of cohesive co-founders to when you're over 100 people, right? So making sure that there are goals, objectives, priorities, a lot of the things that Max was saying earlier, that what is the goal that the team or group or the individual is trying to achieve, and having that be organized and clear. In terms of like work environment, I think we have definitely changed, right? Since 2013, we're headquartered in New York, and we would have definitely in the bull runs, we would see 2 to 3 prospects, and customers in New York City in person every single week, right? People would fly in from Thailand or Korea or, in Europe, Latin America. And that was kind of a constant. And it was very important to have that presence, have the office, you walk in with the logo and the conference rooms and everything. And COVID definitely changed that from having kind of our hub. We had a few hubs. We had a hub headquarters in New York. We had a hub in Asia. We had a couple other offices around the world, but we moved really to a remote first culture at the beginning of COVID, right? So March of 2020, we basically right around the time cut the lease and went remote first. And, we were very well set up for that, having serviced customers and countries in every single time zone. You need people all over the world. So you need the infrastructure to support that type of remote work, the VPNs, the secure access, those different pieces were very easy for us to transition because we were already supporting a big percentage of the workforce. But now it's actually moved into more of a hybrid model, right? So it's remote first. When people join, we have, I was just trying to count, it's over a dozen countries that we have people that, work for the firm. And in certain locations, it's kind of an option to have an office, right? We have a couple people in Canada, they have a small co-working space they'll work out of optionally. If people need that environment, like in New York, people's apartments, they don't want to work in their own space. They want to get out and be in an office. We have an option for that. And then in certain regions, we power banks, we power financial institutions. We work with governments like the government of El Salvador. That's actually one of our larger offices now in person, where we have, 30 people in San Salvador, the capital there, where they go in the office, every day, or at least the majority of the week. So it's somewhat by need, based on what the team is doing, what the customers, require, but it's more of an optional type of so if you want to come and work for Alpha Point, we look for the best talent wherever you are, and we can support working remotely, having an office local to a particular team. So it's been an interesting evolution.
Yeah, and Imran, you mentioned earlier, running your own marketing agency. So I certainly have experience doing exactly that. And structuring those teams is a little bit difficult, because unlike other job activity, the measurements are a little bit tricky, as well as with marketing, you're never really done in terms of a job. It's just because there's always to be made, right? So how have you designed and really developed, your specific marketing team structure?
So I can talk about the company first. Kyber Network has about 130 plus people now. So we have people in like Germany, Korea, US, Singapore, Vietnam, and more. The marketing team is in charge of global marketing. So I lead about a 10, 11-man team. And then we do have like freelancers and mods and stuff on the side as well. Some of them work remotely, like myself. Some of them work hybrid. So we do have physical offices, like in Singapore and Vietnam, for example. But the real goal, I think, is at the end of the day, is as a decentralized organization, is to also work decentrally, right? So to work asynchronously, working outside of any time zone requirements. Essentially, the goal is work anywhere in the world with no office hours, just like what Max said, right? So I think we are not exactly there yet, but I think we are very clear about that. And I think what Igor said around having different facets around the structure. So we have like our culture and our code. So we have very clear vision, mission, we have very clear values around what we stand for, especially as a decentralized player. And then we have to translate that into how we make decisions every day. We have systems that need to be make sure that information is transparent throughout. So like, for example, any of our notes from our management meetings, from our top management meetings, can be read by anyone in the company, including interns. So they actually know exactly what's being discussed anytime in the organization. So we look at how do we make it such that the system can work towards that end goal. We've looked at companies like GitHub as a model around decentralization, but of course, with recent developments, maybe there need to be new models around decentralization and new role models as well. But I think that there's some things that work face to face, like your water cooler talk, and I think that just requires a lot more touch time with the team. So most of my team work within like a few hours of each other still right now. But I would say that the real goal is to be able to work across time zones. And I think that's still something that we're still trying to crack, right? So for example, now most of you guys are on the East Coast, and that's like 11 a.m. for you guys. It's close to midnight where I am. And I think these are still real things when it comes to things like time sensitive launches and stuff like that require active and synchronized management. I think those are some of the things that I think in the short to mid term we still have to figure out. But I think that's where our DNA is.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Max, I want to turn it over to you real quick. Sounds like there's incredibly ambitious projects, and the company seems to be steering towards that direction. How is it? It's certainly difficult when the objective is so vast and ambitious. Finding the appropriate talent. How is it that you think about finding the best talent?
Is it for me or for the other Max?
This Max, and this way.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it's for me. I think Maxine's project is also very, very exciting and ambitious. So we'd love to have his thoughts too. Two thoughts for me. One is we spend a lot of time trying to bring our own people up to speed. Web3 moves super fast, and a lot of times you find people who have a strong cultural fit, who are sort of passionate about the cause. In our case, is like very much focused on climate change, on social impact, and then we spend a lot of time trying to get them familiar and comfortable with all of the technology happening in Web3. So I think this is something we spend a lot of time developing. More recently, I've been thinking that we need to hire Web3 native, right? Because it does take like a very large ramp up period to sort of get to scale. And I've been very lucky to go and travel the last 2 months in New York, Austin, Paris, Barcelona, and now in San Francisco. And so along my travels, it's been the first time since COVID that I've been meeting a lot of people, again in person, and using that as an opportunity to recruit. So we added 2 more people on our team just from my travels recently. And I think going forward, something I'm really excited about, and with the platform you guys are building here, it's how do we create different incentive structures for education? There are some incredible 19, 20-year-olds who are way more Web3 native than people in their 40s, and a lot more effective, right? And they don't need a college certificate. They need really to just have gone through 2 or 3 cycles of working on projects, and certification and experiences like that to us matter a lot more.
If I'm gonna jump on that real quick, just because Bondex, we're focused on talent, and you've brought up the platform. The resume, which is a static view of what someone's done, right? And the same with a LinkedIn profile, it's increasingly obsolete, and it's more and more obsolete in Web3 because it is an emerging kind of industry, and they've been so kind of forward-looking in the way that they've structured teams. And as you're saying, I'm way more interested in when someone's passionate about, committed about, and what they can do, that their college degree or where they worked at before. Right. So the idea and the vision for Bondex is, now we're going to launch the Web3 marketplace, but the idea for a professional network, which is gamified and tokenized, will be to go from static view of someone's professional potential to something dynamic. And you do that by inserting, for example, validated interests from education that they're completing, certificates, feedback loops from projects, samples from projects that they've worked on, and then accreditation from their skills. If you claim you know Solidity or Rust, or you claim that you've done marketing Web3 before, take a HackerRank test. We have some ideas with our partners, our Blockchain Training Alliance, for example, or the blog space, about how to do certifications for Web3. And all of that will take the shape of the first badges, but then, proof of knowledge NFTs, proof of performance NFTs, soulbound tokens, all of that will make a resume completely dynamic, and it'll give a view of someone's professional potential in much more detail. And no matter what age, gender, geolocation, or wherever you are, and that is the goal and some of the vision that we have here at Bondex, Max. And Jake, I'll turn it over to you so we can keep going on the conversation. Just wanted to jump on that.
Yeah, as a college dropout, I couldn't concur more. I mean, it's no, certainly I think for not just the Web3 space, but Max, to emphasize your point, like there's an incredible opportunity for young people who have perhaps more of an open mind. Their brains are a little bit more mendable, especially when it comes to learning this new technology. They simply just need some of those skid marks, or it's like riding a bike. You got to skid your knee a few times before you really get it under control. Maxime, I want to push this to you real quick. What's worked best for you in terms of talent acquisition? Is there a really creative, unique way that you found, some of the best talent? Is there an out of the box strategy? Like, how have you been able to hunt down great talent?
Yeah, it's a great question, and Max's reply was already great. But what worked for us, so just a bit better. So nobody who joined Atato actually since we started left, and actually we have people applying almost every single day. So why in the blockchain where it's so competitive, where people applying? Because we did something since the beginning which actually worked a lot for us, is that we ran a community event. So in 2018, we took over the Ethereum community back in Thailand and Singapore. We are doing the Ethereum Bangkok event. And this is the way that you are meeting with passionate people. When you have someone applying, you can feel if he's passionate or not. But when you have people going to a conference, coming to you and say, "Oh, I like what you guys are doing. Can I apply?" It's right that there is no diploma for blockchain yet. There is maybe for developers, smart contract skills, and so on. But if you are looking for marketing, BD, and also those kind of skills that you can't measure like a developer, basically it's all about being passionate, really wanted to get into the space. So for us, community events, it's the number one. People come to see us, they know our name, so they apply directly on our website and to us directly on LinkedIn. What didn't work is basically poaching people from Web2 company, which is strange, right? Because they have expectations which are completely unaligned with what blockchain is today. Talking about you, Google and Facebook C-level. But I think that they are changing. People see that blockchain is staying. It's not like 2018 anymore, right? It's still there. So we have people able to basically reduce their salaries or are looking for more ESOP basically to join a project. But if I'm wanting to conclude, community events work wonders for us, and we are very lucky to have people applying every day.
Yep, and Igor, as you think about being a vet in the space, I assume early stage it was probably relatively difficult finding people that understood the technology in the right capacity that would be a good fit for the team. What has that looked like for you? What are some of the key kind of skills and attributes that you look for as you think about onboarding and bringing on new talent?
Yeah, so I think that it always starts with, what are you trying to hire? At this point, when you have departments and you have, well-defined job descriptions, it starts there. Does the person have the skills that are needed? I think kind of early on, you can be a little more flexible, but as you grow, it's important that the job can be done. And, there are professional skills, whether it's, coding skills or, experience in project management, et cetera. But as far as how to figure out the culture fit, we've tried different ways to do that. A lot of times it's passion for Web3, passion for crypto, somebody that's already learning about it. It matters less if they come from, another blockchain company. It matters more if they've been researching, they've been interested, they've purchased some crypto, in the past and just explored it. When somebody joins AlphaPoint, it's critical. Even if they don't own any assets in the space, we actually give them, $100 of a new project that they've never had tokens of before, because that's a really kind of core component of this ecosystem is being someone invested in projects, whether it's Bitcoin and or Ethereum if it's kind of your first asset, or brand new projects that that are coming out regularly. So our process is, for certain types of skill sets, we'll actually do code tests. I remember one of my mobile development managers said, I don't know what to do with this resume. This resume doesn't tell me anything. I can evaluate code, right? So here's a 24-hour code test, give that to them. I'll evaluate the code. If it passes certain criteria, then I'll do, an interview and go through the steps. So I think we've evolved to that, for certain skill sets that you can test. I think, that was mentioned earlier, HackerMoon or others. If we can do that, we do it for the skill set. Otherwise, I think work samples are excellent way. And early on, when I was much more involved personally in hiring, I would give candidates homework. Hey, okay, you say you're good at this kind of research project, do a little research on this new token, and send it back to me, sometime next week. And that tells you a ton about what the actual experience will be once they start. And obviously better to figure that out before versus after.
Yeah. And a resume is so limiting because you can list, you can say anything and you can make things up and write them down and whatever. But to your point, I love the idea of including some sort of like early stage test projects. Imran, on your side, how is it, do you deploy something similar in marketing, or maybe even more interesting, is there an interesting way where you found an incredibly talented marketer on your team that maybe didn't go through a traditional, job application process?
Great question, Jake. So I think when I'm looking for the talent, right, there's a few aspects I'm looking for, right? So one's the hard skills. Second, in my case, I'm looking for the DeFi knowledge. And the third is the culture and attitude fit, right? So it's normally easier to find people with skills and much harder to find people with the industry, like the Web3, the blockchain, the DeFi knowledge. So I'm typically looking for someone that has a Web3 portfolio, someone that comes up and says, here's my portfolio, it's on my Notion page or my blog or whatever it is, and they show what they've done. They show I've moderated here on a volunteer basis, I freelance here, this is my portfolio, this is where I was ranked. And I find, just like what the rest have shared, that those that have actively taken up those learning experiences, formal or otherwise, that's a far more stronger indicator of whether they have what it takes to take on the role. Like we look at community, and sometimes when I go into my community like Discords or Telegram, sometimes I find very active community members that are technically doing my community manager's job. They're talking about how the liquidity pools are working. They can explain to users who are asking what's the difference between a Uniswap pool versus a Kyber swap pool and all the technicalities around that. And I think those are some of the ways I've actually found people in my team who actually stepped up because they are already doing it without the financial incentive. It's because they already are very excited, very passionate about it. They are very passionate about a project. And we've had some really cool people join our team this way. So I would say that through the community and then through, of course, our internal referrals, those tend to be the highest, most effective form of recruitment.
Yeah, and I have kind of a random question here that I want to open up to everyone and see if you have either a perspective on.
Jake,
go ahead, Ignacio.
Before we move on to the next question, and don't forget me, you're forgetting me in every round, but versus talking about how we go about talent acquisition for our internal team, I'd like to talk about some of the things that Bondex wants to do to help, companies like yours do their talent acquisition. And I love everything I'm hearing because it confirms, it confirms the things that we're working on and why it's needed. But there's one thing that no one has mentioned, which I find crucial in talent acquisition, which is referrals. How many of you get referrals for those positions, and what type of priority do those referrals have? I'm willing to bet that when you guys open a position and you might ask friends that are in maybe the VC fund that backs you, or another similar company, or someone that's in your similar role in another company, and you ask them for a referral of someone that they know, and they give them to you, I'm willing to bet that that recommendation usually goes to the top of the pile for interviewing, and that level of trust for recommendation goes very high. And I'm talking about this because I find referrals to be one of the most effective recruitment tools ever, and they're usually very limited internally. And usually you have gatekeepers, which are called recruiters, who are actually the ones kind of doing referrals. And, they charge 30% of someone's yearly salary to do it. At Bondex, we want to go from that model to a bounty referral model. So all of your companies would be able to put either, whether you have a kind of a native token of your own, or you want to use one of the major tokens. And instead of going to recruiter, you put 10K, 5K to find a certain position. And then people within the Bondex network would stake tokens to make referrals to that process. And then it's all gamified. If people make it to the interview process, those people mine a little bit from the reward pool. And that person who made the recommendation of that person who gets hired mines most of, or the most significant part of the reward pool. And Bondex charges a rent on that bounty referral system. And after that person has successfully worked at the company for 3 to 6 months, the escrow releases everyone in the process, gets rewarded. We call this decentralized talent, or DTAL. It's our core of our part of our innovation, and it's something we're very excited about. And it's about democratizing talent, because today, companies pay out very high fees to recruiters, which sometimes recruiting agencies create a misalignment of incentives, lack of transparency. They charge a lot of money. And on the other side, I'm willing to also bet that everyone here has made a recommendation for someone to get hired, or has referred someone that successfully got a job, and they usually get a thank you, and they didn't do it for any financial incentive. But guess what? That's worth a lot of money, and you should be monetizing your network a little bit and getting some sort of reward for it. And so that's what we're working here at Bondex. And I just wanted to touch on that as one of the talent acquisition tools that we'll be offering the companies that are part of our network. And Jake, I'll take it over to you for the next round of questions.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I actually just wanted to open this up. I think, an inherent problem with any new technology is potential bad apples or bad players. And, this space in particular, because of the way it's set up, probably has a greater propensity to perhaps attract that, or at least from an audience and perception and regulatory standpoint, it's going to be a little bit more receptive. Like, we know the Fortune 1000 corporate world environment is incredibly corrupt, but they can get away with it because of, incentives and such. That said, how are, and I'm opening this question up, and maybe there's a solution, maybe there's not. How are you all thinking about, avoiding bringing on potentially bad apples that have the wrong intentions, that aren't aligned appropriately, and can essentially become kind of a cancer inside of a company that causes more and more issues with even other team members? Does anyone have a particular perspective on that?
Yeah, I can take it if you want. It's always a risk, right? What we do at Atto is basically you have 4 months probation period. So it sounds a bit long, right? But generally, we don't ask you to do anything during the first 2 weeks. We just want you to observe, meet everyone that you're going to work with, and so on. And we have those team meetings, which are different, business-wise, training, and so on. And you clearly see personality of those people very quickly. So during those 4 months, you have very strict objectives and review every 2 weeks. And it just happened actually to us a couple months ago. But those bad apples that you might see who doesn't fit the company, you see them very early on. So it's very easy to cut it, or maybe give them another role or something like that. So it's not an issue today. And to come back on what Ignacio was saying, obviously a referral is the holy grail, right? So we give incentive to people, but generally it's people who refer someone to work in our company, they basically vouch for them. So, they don't refer anybody or someone they just met in a bar or something like that.
Just to add to that, there's Dunbar's number, which is that, cognitively as human beings, we're only able to maintain meaningful relationships with about 150 people. Beyond that, it becomes difficult, right? So when you go about who would you vouch for professionally, that number becomes even much smaller. And then how do we make, to answer Jake's question, how do we get rid of bad actors? If we just opened referrals to bounties to everyone without any staking, without putting your money where your mouth is, we would get spammed to the next planet. Today, when you have Web2 social media and professional networks, I don't know about you guys, my LinkedIn inbox is a flood of spam, right? So it's not just about earning mechanisms, it's about staking mechanisms that decrease noise, spam, and incentivize more meaningful interconnected exchanges. So that's why, there's a 10K bounty reward. You have to bet $100 that your referral is good. If the company says the referral was relevant, even if they don't make it past, you're not going to lose your tokens. But maybe you make a 20% return if they make it to an interview process. Now, if you really made a really crappy referral, then you're going to lose your tokens, because we have to disincentivize that spam. There's no other way around it.
Yeah, as far as the question of like how to filter, I completely agree with referrals. Like I think 10 to 20% of the staff that we have is through referrals. We incentivize employees. We remind them on every it's cost effective, and the talent quality is almost always better, right? It just, if somebody has had experience actually in a professional manner working with somebody, it's a big deal. I think it's also incentivizes employees to sometimes go to events. If you're looking for somebody that has a certain skill set, there are code camps, there are, meetups for that skill set, and people that are going to those meetups in person find that to be a very good way to kind of filter out and get good talent that's actually passionate about their domain. So that's been very effective for us as well. But in terms of like the bad apples, there's two types of bad apples. There's somebody that's not productive, right? That is potentially decreases, everybody that we add to the team, we want to elevate the team. You are who you surround yourself with. And if you bring people that are, kind of not aligned with the mission, wasting time, going in kind of wrong directions, that's important to identify, try to correct, and permanently correct if you can't. Sometimes it's difficult to, we generally have a philosophy of hire slow, fire fast. It's kind of similarly in a probation type model. Obviously you want to catch it in those early stages, but you don't always find that. So if there's corrective action doesn't, talking to the person, giving them feedback, that also helps tremendously. Some people managers aren't comfortable giving feedback. They need to be coached and mentored on that as well. But one of the biggest risks in Web3 and crypto is, there are assets on the line, and these are like hard cash, bearer instruments. So there's a lot of exposure that other types of firms don't have, just from a security perspective. So it's important that companies also have good security protocols, especially when you're hiring remote from other countries, in terms of basic things like background checks, reference checks, video calls with those different individuals, to try to help with that perimeter as well, because people that haven't had that experience, Web3 crypto companies are under attack from like a security perspective constantly, and the worst is to have that internally. So it's really critical that you protect that attack surface.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing answer, Igor. And I think Axie Infinity's hack came from a bad interview, or someone who hacked them through the interview process. Just to go on what you've said. Sorry about that, interrupted. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah. So maybe I can.
Phishing. That's a very common. Recruiting is one of the key places, right? With a resume, a Word doc that can basically take over a machine. That's like every company around the world has, is potential victim to that, but those tools are being deployed towards companies in this space, I think, at a higher percentage.
I think we need more secure.
Yeah. So I think just.
Sorry, Imran, go ahead.
No worries. Okay, so I'll just to add on my answer. So I think if you look at bad apples, I think a lot of it is around clash in values. So for example, in the DeFi space, you have lots of protocols that ship fast, and then get wrecked fast, right? So for example, if you look at Kyber swap, we don't do cross-chain swaps yet because the cross-chain bridges are the ones that get hacked all the time. Every other week, every other month, the bridges are the ones getting hacked. So our first constraint is security. So when it comes to our values, we have certain things that we prioritize over the other. If it means that we're gonna sacrifice user security or the platform security, then we don't ship faster, right? And I think when it comes down to like the interview process, case study, and the probation, it starts becoming very obvious which filters people come in and make decisions upon, and then you can weed it out quickly, right? So the whole point of the culture and the values is to set very strong codes that force people in or out, keep people in, or very quickly force them out, right? Another one that we have is collaboration. Like we have a lot of brilliant people, but we don't want people who come in and they work making other people feel wrong or stupid all the time, right? We want people like what Igor said that elevates the team. So even if they're super smart, but at the cost of collaboration, then it's very clear that it's against the values that we hold as a team. So I think when we have those kind of codes very clearly outlined, I think internally we can have those team discussions in terms of hiring. We have those values very clearly set so that the hiring managers can take a look at it. And I think for people, they can self-select to be in or out. And I think hopefully that does most of the job before we actually have the bad apples come in.
Yep, that's incredible. And what I'm hearing a lot of is this idea of de-risking. How do we de-risk the hiring process to avoid potentially very problematic issues, or at a bad minimum, make a bad hire that ends up being a vast opportunity cost. Max, I want to jump to you. How do you think about de-risking? When you're thinking about talent acquisition, and you mentioned now, some more activity going there. How do you think about like de-risking that? Because obviously, your brand and your mission is incredibly attractive. And so, I assume that supports a lot of the efforts on talent acquisition. Perhaps you have a flood of, a lot of great potential talent, but how do you find the best winners there?
Yeah, and something I want to actually mention. This actually comes out of sort of painful experience we've had, is that actually when you have a fully remote team, having even one or two people who are not aligned actually is really challenging for motivation and also for coordination. So we've had this experience, about a year ago, where we had someone who on the surface was really mission aligned, but actually just from a work productivity and later culture perspective became kind of a negative spiral. And this actually affected other people. And because we're all remotes, right, there's no like it's everyone's kind of at the same, sort of front line of communication. So when someone is really negative, it actually affects a lot of other people. So, unfortunately, this led to eventually like 3 or 4 people leaving the company. And I was like, wow, there's like a contagion effect here that you don't really have if you have in person, because you can actually just have a direct conversation. There's kind of a lot of like he said, she said things, happening on Telegram or on Slack. And so I've been much more cautious about adding new people since then and saying, okay, how do we vet them? How do we sort of allow them to touch a limited surface area of the company until we actually feel very comfortable, and then sort of giving them more breadth and exposure. And I think as an entrepreneur, this is just a unique thing that you don't really think about when you're actually adding remote teammates. So I think one of them is just having an extended trial period. Another one actually is kind of completing individual tasks that don't involve the whole company until sort of gradually earning that sort of exposure. So these are sort of 2 things I've been thinking a lot about.
Well, gentlemen, I just want to thank all of you, because I think you've given invaluable advice on how to run organizations in Web3, startups, distributed workforce, how to hire well. We're going to be putting all of these in summaries that we'll share later with our community and your communities as well, because I really think this is invaluable advice, not just to other people in startup, but to future employees to be prepared to this type of challenges and how to address them and be prepared for that. And I just want to, we're nearing the end of our interview here, but I wanted to give every single person a chance to sell their company, why is it awesome to work at your company? And we'll start clockwise. Imran, why should people want to go work at Kyber Swap?
Thanks, Ignacio. I think really the most important thing that we're standing for is human freedom. And Kyber Network, we are decentralization maxis. So like we believe in the power of decentralized technologies to make the world and human lives better. So we truly believe in that. And I think when you look at our history, we started out in 2017. We ICO'd and we were directly mentored by Vitalik, and we were OG of DeFi before DeFi was coined. And I think along the way, we did some cool stuff, right? We invented Red Bitcoin. We invented DeFi swap aggregation. And we have a reputation of being 5 years of innovating while being exploit-free and rug-free. So I think that's something that we hold very, very proudly on our chest, right? So I think for people who are really into decentralization and into DeFi, and you want to do meaningful work long-term, and I think that could be the place for you with Kyber.
Love that. And Maxime,
All right.
your turn.
Yeah.
Sell us in your company. Why would I want to
Sure,
go
the
work
first
there?
because we are building super cool stuff. But the long reply is, we've been in this space for quite some time, and nobody knows, but we were the first company to do NFT on Ethereum mainnet. We invented quite a lot of stuff on the security side. And basically what we are building is for basically my mom and anybody who is not familiar with crypto to be able to interact with crypto securely. And today, that's the biggest pain point, right? You want to secure your seed phrase, you don't understand how MetaMask works and so on. And it's blocking, I would say, 99% of the adoption. So what we are providing is basically a secure solution for you to interact with cryptocurrencies and not have to worry about your seed phrase and your password and so on. The last thing is that, all the people who are joining us, that they are innovators. So we are trying new stuff that doesn't exist on the market yet. We are the first one to build some very cool stuff on the MPC side and cryptography side. So if you are into this stuff, we create a good work environment. Nobody left the company since we joined. We just doubled in size. So and also one last perks, like one week every quarter, you have to spend the time with your teammates, generally in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, or in Singapore. So it's pretty cool stuff.
That's an incredible stat, Maxine. No one's left the company. There's zero turnover. That's impressive by, any standard in any company.
Especially in the blockchain space, yeah.
Congratulations on that. Yeah, especially in the blockchain space. And it's Alpha Point's turn.
Yeah, great. I think Alpha Point's a great company to work for. I think we've been a bridge for traditional finance and for people to have access to digital assets for over 9 years. We've, profitable, working remotely. We have a lot of, one thing I didn't mention earlier is we do team offsites. So we like to do a trip in the US once a year, and once a year do a trip abroad. This year we went jet skiing in a lake in El Salvador, which was a really great experience. And the projects, and you're really working on the bleeding edge. I think similar to what Imran said about freedom, that's what at the core of what this space is about. It's freedom of holding your own assets, freedom of exchange, and we really empower that all over the world. We're powering the Chivo application in El Salvador, which is providing financial services for the first time to a population that 70% of the population is unbanked. And this is their first time touching a financial application, having access to Bitcoin, and really, really kind of learning what that means and then what that balloons into. And being on the bleeding edge, we're touching, hundreds of different projects, right? We're supporting all kinds of new initiatives in this space, the different tokens that support them, integrations to the best of breed service providers in the space as well. So lots of room to work with great companies, great projects. And we're very actively hiring over 50 open positions today.
Damn, look at the sound of that, everyone. Ring, ring, ring. Lots of opportunity there. I encourage everyone to go check out Alpha Point's careers page. And Max, you're the last one. Why do people want to work at your company?
Thanks. I think first and foremost, one, it was a big pleasure to be here. I think learned a lot actually listening to all these amazing entrepreneurs share about your own hiring challenges. Really grateful for Jake and Ignacio to sort of give us the space, and also all the audiences tuning in. At Carbon-Based, we believe that climate change is honestly one of the most critical existential crises we live through, right? And all of us live on this beautiful planet, the one kind of behind me. If we don't get this right, then we're basically condemning ourselves and our children to endless suffering. We also believe that crypto is actually one of the most powerful tools to address this problem, because it is fundamentally an incentive tool. It's a way to change people's behaviors. It will reward and actually model all of the sort of the actions people can take. And for everyone out there who kind of cares about saving the planet, we're trying to use Web3 in the most effective way possible to do so. Internally, we have amazing international team. We have people who speak, I think collectively speak like 10 languages, and everyone I think kind of bleeds this like desire to sort of beautify the planet together. And finally, the last thing I would say is, if we get this right, we have the opportunity not only to sort of help individual companies, we can help countries. So a lot of our clients and conversations now are around how do we actually help a sovereign state, manage their carbon inventory. We added a central banker from the Hong Kong Monetary Authority recently, who used to oversee about $250 billion worth of treasury. So these kind of opportunities, I think, are very few, and this is a cool chance to work on these problems.
Wow, well, guys, this is all incredibly impressive. I hope everyone listening got excited. We're going to be sharing this on all our socials. We're going to get this to a very, very large audience. And I just want to say some of the highlights from this. Are you mission driven? Do you want to save the world? Do you want to work and fight for the freedom of the individual and sovereign individual sovereignty? Do you want to, these are, if you're this type of person, and it doesn't just have to be tech skills, and it's been mentioned, these people need, all these entrepreneurs and these companies need marketers, business development people, finance people. If you want to work on the cutting edge, I advise you to stop looking at traditional startups. I advise you to start looking at Web3, because it is a paradigm shift. We're trying to change the world. And these are the type of companies and opportunities that we want to offer at Bondex. And with that said, I also want to thank our MC, Jake, and everyone that's participated here. I hope everyone enjoyed the time here, and I look forward to getting in touch with you. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic weekend.